Hi everyone, I'm Mimi Lichtenstein, and today on Adventures in Luxury Travel, I am happy to have on Patricia Johnson to talk all about Belize. Patricia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's an honor to be able to share Belize with your viewers and listeners.
Well, I'm so happy to have you. As you know, I was in Belize a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago, and you and I did not have a chance to meet in person, but I love that you live close by one of the places that I was staying. It's always my favorite when I work with partners on the ground who are in the country, because in some places, they're in different places. And so with you, not only obviously you're from Belize, you live in Belize,
Yes,
and you just mentioned to me too that your dad is from the Garifuna culture. And so you have a lot of history and background with that as well.
correct. That's right. And I try to make it a point to visit some of my clients when I can. Unfortunately, when you were here, my kids were on vacation. So I was away for a little bit. But yeah, I do make it a point to give that little extra special personal touch.
Okay, I always find it interesting when people live in places that we vacation. Where did you vacate? Did you go away with your kids? Where'd you take them?
We actually went to an island. We went to Key,
Oh,
and that is where one of my
I,
husband's family lives.
nice. Okay, and we were there. We were there too. So,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's dive in. So, a lot of people you mentioned ask you where Belize is, and I think even though I know it's in Central America, I always like to remind myself. Is it south of Mexico, north of Honduras? So. For people who are just listening, Belize is a country on the East Coast, so the Caribbean sea side of Central America. And when you zoom in on it, can you give us some overviews of the major areas of Belize that people like to go visit?
Sure. So yeah, like you mentioned, I still get the question, where is Belize? Is it in South America? Is it an island? Do people speak Spanish? So those are some of the questions that I get asked all the time. It's bordered by Mexico to the north and Guatemala to the west and south, and then the Caribbean Sea is to the east. And we're the only English-speaking country in Central America.
Hmm.
So we're uniquely positioned as a part of Central America, but also as a part of the Caribbean. Um, it is a tiny country. It's a little bit smaller than the state of Massachusetts, and it has a lot to offer, from the second largest barrier reef in the world, the Great Blue Hole, Mayan ruins, caves, waterfalls, and lots of outdoor adventures, paired with a culturally rich heritage. From the map, you can see that we do have a lot of reserves. So roughly 26% of Belize's land and sea is preserved, which makes it quite healthy for marine and wildlife flora and fauna. We became the first country to reject offshore oil exploration in 2017.
Hmm.
Three of the major atolls in the Caribbean are located here in Belize. From the map, you can see the Turnef Atoll. Um, a little bit further, it's not here on the map, but there's the Lighthouse Reef Atoll where the Great Blue Hole is. And then we also have the Glover's Reef Atoll.
And those are both, I think, further south of Turnef, right?
Correct, correct.
Okay.
Um,
And so you have how many islands? I guess, I
we
mean,
have we have over 200 islands to
okay.
explore. So
Yeah.
some of them are really tiny. The largest island is Ambergris Key up there in the north. That's about 25 miles long. So
Well, and
usually, yeah.
I was
Sorry,
going to
go
say,
ahead.
we went on Ambergris Key and rented golf carts, which we'll talk about, which made it very fun. But there's a big contrast between that and some of the other little tiny islands that we visited. So there's
Right,
variety.
right.
Um, and
Usually, usually when you Google Belize, that island is normally the first one that pops up.
okay.
Yeah.
And it's fun to get that mix if you're staying out there. And we'll talk a little bit about that, the advantages of chartering a catamaran versus just staying in a hotel. But
Right.
let's dive into the culture first. We had the opportunity to go see some of the Mayan ruins. This is one of them. Is this the biggest one?
Yes, this is the largest one in Belize. This one is Caracol. It's in the Mountain Pine Ridge Reserve, so it's really close to the border in Guatemala.
Okay. And it's really quite awe-inspiring, I guess you'd say, as you are walking up to these structures that are huge, and just to try and visualize what it was like to be there back when people
Yeah.
were living here and building them. I mean, I don't even, do you know off the top of your head what's the period of time it took to create some of them?
I don't, but archaeologists do believe that there were over 1 million people, 1 million Mayas living in Belize back then
At the time?
at the time. So it's truly, the story is particularly amazing on how these structures were built and the Maya civilization, and even visiting the indigenous Maya villages now is inspiring.
Hmm. And I know with we went to Xunantunich, you're able to actually climb up to the top of it, which
Exactly.
I think it had been closed for the last couple of years, but we were able to climb up to the top of it, and it was a beautiful view and just, stunning vistas everywhere. You could see all around. Are you able to climb up Caracol also?
Yes, you're able to climb Caracol as well.
Okay. And they kind of look similar. How far apart are Xunantunich and Caracol?
Caracol is about 2.5 hours driving from Xunantunich.
Okay.
You There is a connection between all these Maya ruins and how they traded back in the day. In the Cayo district, there are so many excavated and unexcavated sites. There's Cajalpech not too far from Xunantunich, which is a smaller site. And then there's also a connection with Tikal in Guatemala, which is not too far from Xunantunich. So it's all very much connected. And people actually get married at these sites. So that's a unique way to seal the deal.
Wow. We didn't see any weddings, but I mean, they were beautiful to see, and we did meet several people who were going to Tikal in Guatemala from where we were staying in this area, and I think it was a solid hour and a half drive. So for
Correct.
somebody who's up for it, those are supposed to be some of the most magnificent ruins. We weren't up for such a long drive, so we went to some of the closer ones. So it's nice to have multiple options depending upon what you're interested in.
Right. And
And I
depending on where you're staying to,
Sure.
Shenantonich is closer, so you can do it in a couple hours. If you're going to Tikal, you can make it a full day activity and see some of the differences between the border towns of Belize and Guatemala.
Mhm. And we had taken, this ferry, which was very unique, in order to get to Xunantunich. Do you have to take this ferry to get there?
Yes, you do.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit about it. It's very unique about how it's powered.
Yeah, so it is a hand crank ferry. There has to be somebody there to actually turn the ferry every time you cross. And vehicles can cross the ferry, but there's only so much weight that can be on the ferry at a time. It's part of the adventure of getting there and how things were done all the way back in the day. Some things you want to keep traditional, and this is one of the things that we love about getting to this site. It adds to the adventure.
Yeah. And we actually were able to take the car on it. The picture that's showing has people on horseback, but you can also take the car on it.
Exactly. So horseback was traditionally how you would um, transport yourself around Belize back in the day as well.
Mhm. Well, yeah, it does. It was fun. And then the caves. So Belize is very big on caves. I don't know how many. Do you know how many there are that you can go explore?
It's probably the largest cave system in Central America. I'm sure it is.
Okay.
And this one, the ATM Cave, which is the one you visited, this is the entrance of the cave. And this has been dubbed the number one sacred cave in the world by National Geographic. It's very, very special. And there are only certain amounts of guides that can actually guide inside this cave. So it's not like you can pick up a random guide and go here. You have to have advanced booking, and sometimes in peak season it's very difficult to get to see this particular cave. um, Pictures are now not allowed inside the cave for that reason of protecting the sacred heritage of what is inside this cave. It's a really fun Indiana Jones type experience, is what it's compared to.
Yeah.
Swimming, hiking, crawling,
And
climbing.
I was amazed at how huge, I guess you'd call them rooms, the rooms were in these caves. I mean, just,
Right.
3, maybe 4 stories high with stalactites and stalagmites
Nice.
and you're swimming and you're climbing and you're squeezing through sometimes rocks that are so close together that you have to turn your head sideways to get through.
Right.
So it's definitely not for the faint of heart, but it really was. I mean, not only cultural, but also obviously like a big adventure. And we adored our guide. And I think that he had mentioned that when the guides were initially certified, the number of them, that they actually haven't certified any more guides since then.
That's correct. They
And
have
so,
not.
how many are there?
Probably less than 50 at this point.
Okay.
So and it's 8 people per guide. However, we do private tours. So if it's just the 4 of you or the 3 of you, you will get your private guide.
Hmm.
So that limits the amount of people that are able to go into the cave every day.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you could see how that's important given what's in there. I mean, they're old ceremonial sites, and you see a lot of very unique things from, what?
Skeletal remains.
Yeah, from almost 2,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago. So, definitely the ATM Cave is to put on your list for sure.
I agree.
And then tell us a little bit about, we'll have a couple photos of the Garifuna culture. Where are the Garifuna people, and tell us a little bit about them.
They are mostly located in southern Belize on the coastal um, parts of southern Belize, mostly in small fishing villages because that's one of their ways of providing for their families is fishing. As I mentioned, my dad is from one of the Garifuna communities, so he's originally from Hopkins. There's an entire town called Dangriga Town that is considered the culture capital of Belize because there's a lot of, activities, drumming, dancing, immersing into the Garifuna culture. There's this really cool tour from Hopkins where you can dress as a Garifuna, you get to cook a meal with the Garifuna women there. You can even fish for your food and then cook this traditional Garifuna soup that
Hmm.
is coconut based, with fish, coconut, mashed green and ripe plantains. It's a really immersive experience. The Garifuna have a specific day that is dedicated to their arrival into Belize. We are descendants of African and Arawak Indians who were shipwrecked on a slave ship and shipwrecked around St. Vincent in the Caribbean and then came to Belize. So that is the story of how the Garifuna came here and how they're able to maintain their rich culture and language, and share that with not only Belize but the rest of the world.
Hmm. Well, I love it. I love live music in general, and I think learning, the cooking and just hearing about their history is always a fascinating part of a trip. And for a lot of people who go to Caribbean destinations, some places don't have as much culture, and Belize is one of them that definitely does. So,
We certainly do. We have a melting pot of cultures. And if you're, sometimes you get up and, try a cultural dance, try to punta, shake your waist, do a little thing here and there. It's fun. For us, we sometimes we try to get the Garifuna to do these really great presentations
mm,
where they might come to you at your beach house and do drumming and dancing lessons and teach you a little bit of the culture, pockets of information that are easy to digest, of course.
yeah. And question. So when we were out on the catamaran, we saw a fishing boat come by that was very, very small. And it probably had a solid 12 guys on it, and then a couple of canoes that were trailing. So a couple of them went out to go fish from the canoes, maybe spearfish. And our captain told us that they all sleep on board this boat for multiple nights. And it didn't even look big enough for all of them to lay down in, quite frankly. Is that from the Garifuna tribe?
That is most likely from the Garifuna community,
Wow.
because that's their way of life. That
Yeah.
is how they survive.
Wow.
So fishing is very big. I actually took my kids to Hopkins this past weekend and we went on a half-day fishing trip. It was their first time going fishing. I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old and a teenager, but we really enjoyed the experience, and just sharing where I come from, where my dad comes from with them was really
Mhm.
special.
Nice. Yeah, I think fishing and kids go together very well. I have a
Exactly.
son who loves to fish.
They loved it.
Okay, well, let's transition to some of the more active adventures. So, as you mentioned before, the Blue Hole, a lot of people who, certainly if they're scuba divers, they've heard of the Blue Hole. Tell us a little bit about where this is and what people do there.
So this is in the Lighthouse Reef Atoll, and you can get here from Ambergris Key, from Placentia. It's easier from the northern side, so from Ambergris Key or Key Cocker, and it's usually a full day activity because it takes, if you're staying there, it takes a few hours to get to the Blue Hole.
Hmm.
Um, and it's really great for divers. If it's a bucket list item for you, you can dive up to 130 feet. The Blue Hole itself is around 400 and something feet,
Wow.
but rarely do divers get to go all the way down. Um, but you have to be really, really an advanced diver to go into this Blue Hole. It's not necessarily about viewing a lot of marine life, because you will get to see a lot more marine life on the barrier reef. But once you're down in the Blue Hole, you get to see these great formations,
Hmm.
and maybe a shark somewhere in there. It's spectacular. I myself, I'm not a diver, and so the way I saw the Blue Hole initially was flying over it. So there are scheduled flights from Ambergris Key that take about an hour, and you fly over it multiple times and get to see the magnificence of the Blue Hole. If
Yeah.
you're there on the shore, you don't actually see the entire formation of the hole, but it is an amazing experience.
Yes. And it just looks absolutely stunning. All the different shades of blue. Absolutely beautiful. And I will say, when we were going along the coast, you see the waves breaking over the coral reef,
Right.
going essentially extending all the way down, except for occasionally there's a break in it where you
A
can see
channel.
boats.
Yeah.
Yeah, boats go back and forth. But other than that, I mean, the barrier reef extends for, is it almost 200 miles? How long is it?
It's 170 miles, I believe, along the
Yeah,
coast of Belize, and it's the second largest barrier reef in the world, like I said, but I think
yeah.
it's the largest living reef.
Okay. And I will say that the snorkeling that we did, we saw some of the best marine life of any snorkeling that I've done in the Caribbean for sure. I have gone other places where it's just as good, but I was amazed with the turtles and the rays and the sharks and the pufferfish and barracuda. I mean, we saw so much, which was really fun.
That's awesome. I think that
Um,
is thanks to all of the efforts on preserving the marine life here, all of the reserves that we have, and all of the education that comes with it.
yeah, and it's paid off because there is a lot to see. Um, despite the fact that there's a lot of fish to see, people also go fishing, um,
Right.
which again is a favorite pastime of ours. There's so many different kinds. I think my son caught some snapper, and our captain was spearfishing. He taught my son and my husband how to spearfish, and he caught a couple groupers, I think.
Grouper.
So we were lucky enough to be able to have snapper and grouper, and we even actually, my husband found a conch that he brought up
Mhm.
one time. We only got one, so we didn't have, ceviche, conch ceviche, but it was fun to find one that wasn't already found by the divers.
Yeah, it's good to catch your fish and then prepare it, or have your chef prepare it for you and actually eat the product of your labor.
Yeah.
And
And
you
you
can
know,
do this on the catamaran, but you can also do this on a tour. If you're staying on land, you can do a cook your catch expedition.
Yeah. And I would say that before this, my son said he typically only ate lobster, tuna, and salmon, I think, but he ate both grouper and snapper because he
Awesome.
helped catch them. So
Awesome. That's
they'll be
great. That's a win.
yeah, they'll be a lot more apt to try it if they're the ones who caught it. Um, and so for people who are going out fishing, like we were trolling for part of it, to go and get out, the big fish, you're going outside of the barrier reef, right?
Right. Deep sea
Okay.
fishing. Deep
Okay.
sea fishing is definitely possible as well.
Yeah, so you go outside the barrier reef, but there are fish that you can catch inside. Like that's where we caught the grouper, and the snapper. We caught those inside the barrier reef. So
Correct. There are some protected species like the permit and tarpon. So there are a lot of people that come to Belize for sport fishing. So, um, yeah, that's definitely possible here, fly fishing.
okay. And then cave tubing was a fun adventure. We did that one day too. How many different places throughout the country is there cave tubing? Not as many as there are caves.
Not as many. This is one. This is the Hol Chan Archaeological Reserve, and then there's Saint Herman's closer to the capital, Belmopan. There's another one, I believe, down south, but there are not a lot of places that you could do cave tubing. And cave exploration encompasses more than this. You had the ATM cave that we spoke about. You have this floating on the inner tube inside the cave, which is fun, and you have canoeing inside a cave at Barton Creek Cave. There are some dry caves that you can hike into and
Mm,
view um, ceremonial remains as well. So there are different caving experiences that you're able to take part in.
okay. And then hanging bridges. I know in Costa Rica they have a lot of hanging bridges. We did not do this. So are these similar areas to where the cave tubing is and all the kind of the inland experiences?
Yeah, so this one is more in southern Belize. This is a canopy walk. There are some in around the cave tubing site as well. There's another bridge. So it is not as popular as Costa Rica, but there are some experiences here for sure, along with ziplining.
Okay. Yeah, we have and rappelling. That's always fun.
Yes, so this one is the Black Hole Drop at Ian Anderson's Caves branch, and this is rappelling inside down into a sinkhole.
Okay.
I have done this one before. The scariest thing is just going over the edge.
Yeah.
Uh, but once you're over the edge, it's pretty straightforward and easy from there. But just looking down, it's like,
Yeah. It seems like a
uh,
big leap.
yeah. So is that there's also waterfall rappelling that you could do with the
Mm.
waterfall, beating you, and it's an exhilarating experience. Not for everybody, but if you are adventurous, I highly recommend it.
Yes, we've done some rappelling and waterfall rappelling and canyoning in other places, and we love it.
Yeah.
And ziplining, which is more of an well, maybe not more of an adrenaline rush, but you're going a little faster than just rappelling.
Yes, yes, yes,
Um,
for sure.
and then I love this picture. This is of my son tubing behind the dinghy, which is always a favorite pastime if you're chartering a catamaran.
Right.
So there's just so much, and the hiking to waterfalls and seeing, beautiful scenery while you're out there. Would you recommend, or most of the hikes within Belize, something you'd recommend with somebody doing as a guided experience, or there's some that you can do on your own?
There's some that you can do on your own depending on where you're staying. For example, to Big Rock Falls, if you're staying in Mountain Pine Ridge, there are a few lodges in that area that you can stay, and you can actually go hiking to Big Rock Falls from there.
Okay.
But some places are a little bit more off the beaten path and hidden. So if you like a good hiking activity and you don't know where to go, that's where one of our personal guides come in, like the guide that you had for your ATM cave tour. They started Belize hiking group
Hmm.
during the pandemic to keep them occupied and to explore new untouched areas in Belize, places that people don't typically go to. So having that like insider knowledge is key.
Yeah. And there's just so many places to get to that on your own, it's a little harder to find all of them.
Right.
Um, and I love this because it's active but also relaxing. So heading out on a kayak, maybe even with a fishing rod in hand, as the sun is setting would be a magical way to end a day.
I totally agree.
No complaints. And the sunsets from Belize, were just beautiful. Every night
Beautiful.
it was beautiful sunsets. So I'm a big fan of sunsets wherever we go. So I love sitting out at that time of day with a cocktail or with the kids, just reading a book and enjoying kind of the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree.
And from a culinary aspect, so Belize is famous for a few different things, including their fresh fish. Tell us a little bit about some of the culinary experiences.
So because we have a melting pot of cultures, the food is very diverse. So this picture is of chocolate, the Maya food. It is made in mostly southern Belize because that's where they grow the cacao the most. And you can have a chocolate making experience if you're staying in southern Belize. Make your own chocolate, watch the process of having it picked from the tree in the farm to grinding and all of the process of getting it into a chocolate bar. And there's nothing more wonderful than tasting chocolate and see after seeing how it is made, right?
Mhm.
And I am a chocolate lover, so this is definitely top on my list. We have the mestizo culture, which is a mixture of Spanish and Maya, and they're mostly corn-based food. So traditional mestizo food would include things like escabeche, which is an onion soup.
Mm,
Tamales is mestizo, relleno negro, which is a black soup. That is mestizo. We talked about the Garifuna culture and the hudut, which is green and ripe plantain called fufu, and in a fish coconut stew. There's cassava bread. Darasa is green banana tamales. So the Maya have, or the mestizo have the tamales, and the Garifuna have the darasa.
okay.
Um, the Creole are more rice and beans, so more Caribbean. Fried jack is definitely a staple for breakfast here.
I didn't
Usually,
have fried jack. What's that?
it's fried dough. So
Mm,
fried dough, and it's accompanied with refried beans, eggs, sausage, or bacon. And the food here is really fresh, farm to table.
mhm.
We are big on farming, especially in the Cayo district. And of course, you know about sea to table. It's always fresh seafood.
Right, which we had almost every day because we were catching our own.
Right.
So that's a great part of it too. I know certain times a year lobsters are in season and you can go catch them, and other times they're not. Do you know the seasonality of lobsters off the top of your head?
Yes, July 1st to February 28th
Okay.
is lobster season, and there's usually a lobster fest to start off the season. So,
Okay.
if you love lobster, this may be one of the festivals that you'd like to go to and experience tasting lobster in different forms. So many ways to cook lobster. I learn something new every year. So,
Perfect. Well, we saw some lobsters when we were snorkeling, but we weren't allowed to take any of them.
yeah, it's
Um,
off
and
season. We give them time to, you
yeah,
know,
grow.
mate. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And then picnics. I love having picnics all over the world, and sitting on a beautiful beach or on a catamaran with a picnic is always a fun thing to do. Do you, when people are going out on catamarans, do you guys, I think you probably have them set up in different places. You can have them, essentially anywhere, probably, right?
Yeah, if you like remote islands, this is perfect for picnics and beach barbecues. And this is one of the spreads at Rendezvous Key, where we just take and make a beautiful spread for you, and you get to enjoy your time there with your family, just enjoying the view and having a really nice picnic. I love picnics myself. We do picnics by the waterfalls, by the
Yeah,
sea, wherever you want to do. We can make it happen.
perfect. Oh yeah, and there's one of the lobsters. Clearly this was during the July to time frame. And
Yeah.
as far as relaxing and luxuriating, let's talk about that for a minute. I personally think going out on a catamaran is a very relaxing way to have a vacation because you're not packing and unpacking. You're just sort of like waking up in one place, going to another, and ending the day in the other. And reading a book and just enjoying the views.
Yeah, it's a floating hotel.
It's a floating hotel. So I would say that for people who would consider something like that, I think it's a great way to vacation. One of my favorite kind of family vacations, actually.
I
And
totally
then
agree.
again, with the sunset, just sitting out and watching the sunset each night is lovely.
Yeah.
What
Laying
about
on a hammock.
laying on a hammock? Yep, we saw a lot of hammocks. What about as far as spas go? We'll talk about hotels in a few minutes, but do you have any favorite spas throughout the country?
I love going to Naya Resort and Spa in Placencia in southern Belize. You also experience a spa at Chaw Creek, which is not far from me. So when I need a little, a little massage, that's where I go.
Okay.
Um, on Ambergris, there's a Sol Spa at the Phoenix Resort. So there are different spa available throughout the country, and we would recommend the best ones.
Okay. And then wildlife. So marine life, this is one of my favorites.
I love that.
Manatees. I'm just missing a manatee. Our captain saw it, but by the time I was in the water, he was gone. But my kids, I think my daughter and my husband were paddleboarding at one of our stops, and there was one in the water right in front of them.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah.
They're
So
so
they
cute.
they are so cute and they are all over. At one point they were becoming extinct and there's a lot of manatee education here in Belize. So we try to protect them as much as possible.
Hmm.
Um,
And
and
are they there all year round, or is there any seasonality to the manatees?
they're here all year round,
Okay.
mostly along the mangrove areas.
Yeah. And then whale sharks. Swimming with whale sharks was one of our favorite activities in Mexico one year. We've not been in Belize because they are seasonal and they weren't there when we were there. But what time of year do the whale sharks come?
So usually around the full moon, around March, April, May, or June.
Okay.
So sometimes 2 days before the full moon, up to 10 days after, and we would monitor more or less when they're in the area,
Okay.
and then you can go snorkeling or diving with the whale sharks.
Okay.
Usually in the Gladden Spit Reserve, which is in southern Belize. So you'd have to stay either in Placentia or Hopkins or at a private island, maybe around Reiki, so that
Okay.
you have easier access to seeing the whale sharks.
Okay. Well, they are magnificent. And the ones we went with were over 20 feet long. I don't know how big this one is, but if your
Huge.
family likes wildlife and marine life, it is absolutely an experience to have once in your life.
Yeah.
And then the rays. So we were surprised because a couple of beaches that we went to, there were huge rays just there. You could feed them
Yeah.
if you were careful.
Yes, you can. And you can see them at different areas throughout Belize. So I think you saw them at Rendezvous and Key Cocker
I think so.
and at the reserves. So at Hol Chan, they're just all over the place.
And
So
so
there's
fun
an
because there's
abundance of wildlife.
abundance of rays. And I think there were probably a dozen of these where we were. They were, I mean, it seemed like they came out of nowhere, but I think they've gotten accustomed probably to people giving them little pieces of fish. So they're happy to show up.
Well, mainly because the fishermen would clean their fish there, mostly at the areas where we'd see them. They're used to fishermen coming by and cleaning their fish. So when they see people, they automatically assume that they'll get some fish.
Okay. They're trained like that. And then this is a photo of my family, I think, yep, at Shark Alley, where there were so many
Many.
sharks before we even got in the water. And these are all nurse sharks, I think, right?
Yes, harmless nurse sharks. Yes.
And they were having a feeding frenzy of some kind. There were probably 30 of them right next to our boat.
Yeah. It's one of the cool things about staying on a burger ski is this is only 15 minutes away from the shore. So going to Hol Chan and snorkeling there, and then going to Shark Ray Alley and swimming with the sharks. If you don't want to swim with them, I have a lot of people that just watch from the boat
Mhm.
because, getting in the water is a little bit too scary. But just having that experience is pretty amazing, and doing it in a couple hours is just so easy.
Yeah. And that was quite an experience. And this is a photo of me swimming. This is when we were snorkeling, and I dove under the water to go swim next to a manta ray, which was absolutely beautiful. Seeing them with their very elegant wings, like floating and gliding through the water, was just beautiful.
Right.
And the turtles. We saw
And
both loggerhead and green
green
turtles.
turtles.
Yeah.
Yeah, a
So, I
lot.
mean, it's not everywhere where you can go snorkeling and you're going to see giant turtles.
Yeah, it's amazing experience here. Like I said, it's all thanks to the reserves that we have, and also staying on islands like Ray Key, which are close to the Glad and Spit Reserve. You're actually practically on top of the reef. You can snorkel from the shore and see some of these wild creatures right
Yeah,
there.
beautiful. And then tell us a little bit about some of the more land-based animals. We didn't see any of them in the wild, but you guys are famous for a couple of big ones.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure if you saw any monkeys at Chaw Creek, but they're usually very active around there.
We heard
Actually,
them. We heard the
yeah.
monkeys. Yeah.
And then jaguars are very elusive, but we do have a lot of jaguars here. In fact, we have the first jaguar sanctuary in the world here in Belize, in southern Belize. And at the Coxcomb Basin Jaguar Preserve, you might not see a jaguar in the wild, but you may see their paw prints. And
Mm.
the Jaguar Preserve is really great for hiking. You can see quatamundis, different cat species here. So, and birds. A lot of people come to Belize for great bird watching.
Hmm.
Over 400 species of birds. So
And are tapirs still in the wild?
they are. They are not prevalent. So it's very hard to see them in the wild. But you can sometimes, if you're lucky, you can see them.
Yeah. We didn't see any, but I have seen one in my life, and they get very big, and they're very
They-
odd looking, but fun to see.
yes.
Um, so accommodations. Let's talk about some of your favorite hotels. And as I mentioned, the catamaran is one of my favorite ways to travel. I think it's unique to or point out something unique about doing catamarans in Belize, and that is that you can do them for less than a week. A lot of places it's a week minimum in order to charter a catamaran, but in Belize it was great because it gave us the ability to charter a catamaran for 4 nights and then go spend equal amount of time inland, which was a great combination.
Right, I agree. So throughout the year, except for peak season, which is Christmas and New Year,
Hmm.
you can charter a catamaran for a minimum of 4 nights and combine that with something different, something inland. Some people do want to continue on the beach, but a lot of people want to have a different experience and explore inland Belize. It's a
Hmm.
great combination.
And when you're doing that, you typically are choosing either going north to the Northern Islands or going south, meaning from Belize City, right? To do both of them, you would need over a week.
Correct, correct. That's right.
Okay. And so Glover's Reef, that's one of the places that's easy to get to if you're chartering a catamaran, right?
That's right.
And the accommodations maybe are a little more rustic. So if you're on a catamaran, then you get your nice accommodations, but yet access to this beautiful place.
Exactly. So you have access to great fishing, spectacular snorkeling. As you can see, the water is blue out on the atolls. You're outside of the reef. So deep sea fishing along the way is great. Maybe you pick up a dorado along the way. You never know. But it's spectacular to be here and be on your catamaran and have the luxuries of that, having your own captain and personal chef cooking for you, and just enjoying this natural wonder that not a lot of people get to see.
Hmm. Agree. It's beautiful. And then Francis Ford Coppola, who a lot of Americans know as a famous director, um, he has two places in Belize, right? Turtle Inn,
Correct.
which this is a picture of, and Blankenau Lodge.
Yes, and he also has Coral Key now, which is off the shore of Placencia. It's a private island.
Okay.
And usually you would stay there for like 2 or 3 nights,
Hmm.
depending. But Turtle Inn is in southern Belize, so great for people that want to stay in one location but have easy access to inland and beach from one place. This
Hmm.
is perfect for that. As you can see, the individual thatched roof cabanas. I love this style of property because it's very unique. It's very private. It's very indigenous to Belize. Like a lot of people used to have thatch homes back in the day. That was how we lived. So this is It's a really cool experience, and you can go from the standard entry level cottages to Francis Ford Coppola's pavilion, or renting Sofia Coppola's beach house. You can do that there. So you can say, I was Sofia Coppola for a few days.
Very fun. And then here's a picture of Chaw Creek, which is where we stayed. Remind me, this is not of our room, but what kind of category room is this one?
So this one is an orchard villa, good for families. The thing about Chaw Creek is that there's different levels of accommodations.
Mhm.
And so if you like to be adventurous during the day, and maybe you want to have, like you mentioned, air conditioning, the other slide shows one of the newer villas at Chaw Creek. So this is a 2-bedroom villa that is solar powered. This has their own private plunge pool, a jacuzzi. It comes with your own personal attendant. So this is modern luxury at Chaw Creek.
Mhm.
If you like to be on this 400-acre reserve and have access to the hiking trails and the horseback riding, butterfly farm, and be not too far from Xunantunich, this is a great location for that. And being on the river as well, you can do canoeing. So I love this accommodations for
Mhm.
that.
And I would say that there's only, is it 2 of
Two
these
of
or
these,
4?
only
Yeah,
two
only
of
2 of
these,
them.
and then there's a spa villa with air conditioning. So if AC is a must, then we would have to look at these options
Yeah,
here, which get booked up
quickly.
quickly. Yeah,
And I will say what I also loved at Shaw Creek is they have so many activities on property, so you don't have to go anywhere. And I think for people with kids, maybe in the age range of like 5 to 12 is like a great sweet spot of a lot of activities that you almost wouldn't even need to leave the property if you didn't want to.
correct.
Having older teenagers, I would say that you might want to go do some of the more adventurous things off property, which is what we did. But it is a great option for that part of the country. And then
Right.
going back to the coast again, tell us a little bit about Itzana.
So Itzana is a newer property in southern Belize, in Placencia, also in the same peninsula that the Francis Ford Coppola property is, but this is more a Central American style property. It kind of feels like a mixture of something that is in Mexico and Guatemala, but has some Belize touches. So it has these villas that have private plunge pools, and it also have the entry level suites. So it is a really cool place to just stay for. If you want to stay 4 days or a week, it's very easy to do that because you can
Mhm,
do so much from this one property.
mhm. Well, it looks beautiful. I didn't have a chance. I did do some site visits while I was there, but I didn't have a chance to see Itzana. But this pool would make me want to just,
Right.
lounge around and read a book. In fact, we read so many books on this trip when we were on the catamaran in particular that my husband and daughter and I were swapping books. Like, okay, I finished my books. Can I have one of your books? So
Yeah,
Belize is
it's
definitely a great place for relaxing and just enjoying and soaking up the
yeah.
gorgeous weather and sunshine.
Yeah, I mean, it's Instagrammable too.
Yeah, absolutely, especially for teenagers. And there are some new big properties, big name brands that are coming to Belize. Tell us a little bit about some of the hotels being built.
So the Four Seasons is slated to be coming to Belize probably by 2025. At it used to be Key Chapel, which was a golf resort.
Mm,
So that will incorporate golf and the whole Four Seasons luxury brand that they're known for. And then there's also Six Senses coming to Belize. So we're excited to see that come to fruition.
yeah.
Belize was not known for having large brands before. It was
Mhm,
more of boutique style resorts. So this is
mhm,
going to be very different for the
mhm.
country.
And remind me, where is the Six Senses going to be located?
It's going to be located in the north, closer to Ambergris Ski,
Okay, nice. We'll
private
do that.
island off of Ambergris Ski.
Yeah. More good options. Okay, I always like to wrap up with some good like takeaway tips or your favorites of different places. So maybe let's start with, I don't know, do you have a favorite beach bar or restaurant that you go to when you're on the coast?
When I'm on the coast, a favorite beach bar. Let's see. In Placencia, I love Placencia. I got married there. A local beach bar, Barefoot Beach Bar.
Okay,
Good to interact with locals there, and sometimes they have local entertainment. So
nice.
on Ambergris Key, everybody goes to Secret Beach because it's great for swimming and there's daytime entertainment. So yeah,
And that's when you rent a little golf cart, which is what we did, and you can drive around the island. It's
correct.
about from where people typically dock. Would you
About
say it's
30
about
minutes.
20, 30 minutes? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's for certainly worth it.
yeah.
And then for time of year to come to Belize, the weather was absolutely perfect when we were there. What's your high season and what's your like absolute peak season? Typically Christmas time, end of December, holidays.
Yeah, so our peak season is definitely Christmas time. In springtime, we're usually very busy as well. And surprisingly, over the past few years, we're quite busy in June. Um, our high season is typically from November to May. It's
Okay.
shifting a little bit to include the summer months as well because we typically have good weather in the summer, although our rainy season starts from June to November,
Okay.
which coincides with the hurricane season. However, we don't get a lot of rain during the summer months.
Okay. Good to know. And then as far as comparing Placencia to Ambergris Key, tell me a little bit about how would you compare and contrast those two?
I get that question a lot, actually. So Ambergris is an island, while Placencia is on the mainland. It's on the coast in southern Belize, so you are able to do land activities easier. If you're interested in just water activities, Ambergris is perfect for that because you're really close to the reef. The
Hmm.
reef is a quarter mile from the shore. In some places, the island actually touches the reef.
Okay.
So at Rocky Point or Robles Point, it touches the reef. So really great for water activities, really great for if you like to be social and want to go restaurant hopping or bar hopping. It's good nightlife, great food. Um, Placencia, on the other hand, it's good for doing cultural activities from there because you have the indigenous Garifuna communities nearby, and you also have the indigenous Maya villages in far south of Belize in the Toledo district. So you don't have to get on a plane or a boat to do, let's say, hiking or tubing or ziplining. It's easier to do it from that one location. If okay,
Hmm.
I want beach, I want to be on the beach, but I also want to do inland activities some days.
Hmm.
So that's the major differences between the two.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you. And then what about sargassum? We all in the travel industry know that the Caribbean has been, I guess you'd say, plagued with this type of seaweed for the last many years.
Yes.
In terms of, I know from other places, the Riviera Maya and islands in the Caribbean, there's not really much of a rhyme or reason to when it comes. It's not like it's a seasonal item. So, as far as knowing how to avoid it, one of my thoughts, which probably we have the same thoughts, are if you're on the side of the island that is not facing out to the Caribbean, then you're not going to have that sargassum washing up on shore. But there are a lot of hotels that are actively removing it as they do in Mexico as it comes onto the beach.
That is correct. So it depends on where you're staying. You can have access to Ambergris Key, for example, from the leeward side. If you're staying on Cayo Espanto, which is a private island, you're 5 minutes away from Ambergris Key, and they offer like boat transfers to and from.
Mm,
So you could have access to exploring Ambergris Key from there and still have easy access to Hol Chan Marine Reserve and Shark Alley and those great things. But also, if you're staying on Ambergris Ski, you have access to Secret Beach, which is great for swimming. If you wanted to, walk into the water. um, Different resorts have different ways of combating how sargassum affects the beach. So some will clean their beach very often and some won't.
Mhm.
And then it not cleaning the beach too often has it affects the air and the smell, because sargassum comes with a smell. So it really, we would recommend the best places that are suited for you. Staying on Kikaka, for example, you could swim on the leeward side,
Mhm.
or staying on Ray Key, which is on the reef. You could stay
Mhm.
there. It's an island, and you wouldn't be impacted that much by the sargassum. So it
Mhm.
really depends.
And the catamaran too, because you're always moving. So
Exactly.
we weren't
Exactly.
impacted it at all by it at all.
Yeah,
Well, I think it's important to know about it, but in terms of where people stay, it's a great question to ask, to make sure if you find out if they're sort of actively combating it, if it is a place that is affected by it.
correct.
Uh, so that if you're looking for that white beach experience, that's the experience you're going to have.
Right. Or Golden Sand Beach.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Patricia. This has been so fun. Good memories for me of just being there weeks ago. I absolutely loved it.
Oh,
And I think for families or people who want to either be active or just relax and luxuriate, Belize has so much to offer, from the coast to inland, that it's a great destination spot for a warm weather vacation in our cold United States winters.
thank you too, Mimi. It's great to share Belize with your viewers.
Well, I appreciate it. All right. Well, take care. I know we will be in touch.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Bye bye.